Welcome to the Organizational Maneuverability Radio Show, defying gravity so your team can soar at altitude, with host Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach Randy Swaim.
Excellent.
Well, hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith, Certified Executive Coach Randy Swaim, with an aviation background. And welcome to our Organizational Maneuverability podcast. And I'll just simply say this, that for today, very happy to have Chris on as our guest. He and I have some aligned background in what we've done and everything. So what I'll do is I'll let Chris give a brief word of introduction. So Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit so people know kind of who's speaking today.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I'm recently retired 2 years ago from the U.S. Navy. I was a NFO Naval Flight Officer, so think Maverick, think Goose, not Maverick, from Top Gun, backseat.
And you know what? In the F4, that was me too. Yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I did that with electronic warfare aircraft, protected our aircraft from being shot down and protected our troops from ambushes and things. And it was a very rewarding career. I took it through squadron command. I commanded a base. That was my last tour. Some headquarters time there and that, but mostly operational. And since then, I've been doing some government contracting in support of NASA and the State Department. So basic background right there.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what, you and I have both had so much alignment, like you said, with your electronic warfare expertise and all that, but also the fact that we were both sitting in the back seat of the airplane we flew in and stuff. So we got a lot of alignment there. So you have my compliments, and I'm retired too. Also, you have my compliments on your service and all that you committed, my friend.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, with that being the case, so for the listeners, that's who you got here today as the host and honored guest, Chris. So I'll tell you what, I know he wants to focus on a couple of very key points that are very aligned with what we're with the organizational maneuverability concept. So I'll tell you what, Chris, let me just give it to you and let you I know you had sort of three items to it. So I'll let you go ahead and launch into the items. And so proceed.
Okay. Yeah. So a little background building this up. When I screened for command, I was at the Joint Staff. My admiral gave me some advice before I took squadron command. He said, remember, it's not about you, and focus on building trust. And as I try to think about my command philosophy and how I would present myself and what's important to me to the unit, I realized that trust really was the bottom line to all of it. So that's really the focus that I applied. My squadron and my base were the top in their category, so it worked. I think, I think it really was the right way to build an effective team because people trusted each other and it really gelled. So the thing is that I try to focus on, okay, so you want a team where everyone trusts each other, because if you don't have that, then the team breaks down.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? And I kind of broke it into components. I said, well, first of all, everyone left and right needs to be able to trust the person next to them is doing their right thing. So in my case, like I have to trust that the mechanics are repairing the engine well, because I'm not going to be able to, I don't have that expertise. So everybody in the team has to be able to know that everybody else is essentially doing their best and carrying their weight, doing things by the book. And one of the things I found is when units slipped is that people just got complacent. They lost track of like what publication, what's the governing procedure. I learned how to do this, but is that really the right way to do it?
Yeah.
That's how they've always done. We've always done it, right? They all kept creeping up.
You see that so often today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a natural thing in that complacency. It's kind of the default. If you don't do anything actively about it, you will slowly decay and degrade.
And you have my compliments for it. You mind if I just share one little minor 1 minute picture on the trust that you're talking about? I remember back when I was assigned to the 4th TAC Fighter Wing as soon as I came out of F4 qualification training. And one of my fraternity brothers from college happened to be assigned to the same base about the same time I was in a different role. But we were the first time he was there. We went out as fraternity brothers and from college and had dinner and stuff. And we're going back just talking. And one of the things that we were talking about was what makes it so that somebody in combat, somebody makes it within themselves where they throw themselves on a grenade to protect the people around them, and very much with what you're talking about there, because the one thing that we came up with, and he kind of came up with it because I was sort of already thinking about it, but he said, you know what, the one thing in their mind is that they believe that if the duties were turned there, somebody else would do the same thing, kind of thing. And that's what sort of generated that level of trust. And so it's kind of just one little tiny picture of exactly what you're talking about with that, with the importance of the trust and everything.
Yeah, and I emphasize, you've got to essentially you have to try your best to be the best if you want other people to trust you.
Yep.
And the other piece of it is that if you slack off, in aviation at least, I always told people this, you're like less than half a second away from like the worst disaster in that you could possibly imagine.
Absolutely.
Like deaths that are your fault, kind of a permanent scarring event. And
Mhm.
and when I shifted to commanding the base, then I would tell our security guys the same thing. I would say, look, you're looking at 1,000 ID cards, and 1,001 could be someone that wants to kill you. And
Yep.
we did have an attack on a terrorist attack at our base, at the gate. So that's for real. But I think keeping that focus up and reminding people why you're doing it, and that I think it's a great thing to have a brand new person check into the command and you say, hey, we're a high performing unit here, and we need you to be part of that and to carry your weight. So you should try to be the best and be an expert.
Yeah.
The the second piece, and we can go deeper in any of these you like, but the second piece is communication. It's hard. It's hard to do that right, but I try to set the tone right away that, hey, admit near misses, communicate problems early and honestly. If something's not right, speak up. Everybody's empowered to do that. And then I would really caution the leaders about when younger people or junior people give you bad news. Stay
Yeah.
calm and react well, because you don't want to cut off that channel of communication.
That's right.
Another barrier I saw to good communication, I saw this all the time, and I'm sure you have too, is when people start speaking of another group, another organization, usually outside of your own, as those jerks at, those idiots at, those bunch of
Yeah.
morons at,
Yeah.
and it's really all it means is that organization isn't giving me exactly what I want, and I clearly don't understand why. So I'm just going to assume that they're a bunch of morons, which they never are. They're always professional. They're just looking
Yeah.
at things from a different way. So I was very careful to suppress it or respond when people said, those bunch of morons over there at the whatever. And I was like, hey, they're
Yeah.
not. And I would make it a point if I came to a new place, like when in Afghanistan, I received some turnover, that I was going to have problems with the intel collection squadron or unit on the base.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had no problems with them because I just walked over there and met them and figured out that they had some issues with how we were operating that was interfering with their operations. And we got that squared away. So it just took reaching out and not just assuming that they're idiots, kind of thing.
It's interesting with the concept of reaching out. Can I just share like about a minute?
Oh yeah.
Of example. One of the things that I did back just before I was promoted to major was I volunteered to be the acting intelligence officer for an international counter drug operation. And I won't tell you anything more about it, but to suffice it to say, I was the intelligence officer for all of the mission and stuff and everything. And one of the things that I did one day is I talked to the mechanic NCO and said, hey, and I found out that they had, little briefings before they all went out to the ramp and everything. And I said, hey, you mind if I come in? He said, no, not at all. And he let me talk for about 3 minutes or something, 3 or 4 minutes, and that's all I was going to do. And I told them, I said, I'm not sharing anything, classified with you. I said, if you ask me a question that's classified, I'm not going to even be aware that I know the answer to it, because I'm not going to even respond to it, kind of thing, kind of thing. But one of the things that I did is I just shared with them. I said, what I want you to do is your job. I just want you to know this. This is the number of drug interdiction things that you knocked out of the way over the last few days. I said, this is the impact your job is having. And I just want to thank you for that. And the look in all those mechanics' eyes was tremendous. And when I walked out, the NCO walked up to me and he said, sir, thank you for coming and talking to us just briefly. He said, nobody's ever done that before. And like you said, it's expressing a degree of trust where they get a sense that I trust what they're doing. And I appreciate that. And that's what I told them. I said, that's what this is about. And that's the only reason I chose to do that. And so just one aspect of kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me, like I spent a lot of time in the work centers and encourage my leaders to do the same thing, just talking to the people, because you learn a lot just listening. And one of the rules I had was if I listened and the sailors got more comfortable, they would share with you some of their complaints or concerns. And
Yeah.
the key was that, take note of it and then follow up with them, and I would follow up even if the answer was not one they wanted to hear. Like if it was, I couldn't help them with whatever issue, come back and say, hey, I looked into this and this is the answer. Sorry, it's not what you wanted, but at least here's an answer.
Yeah.
That listening was really, really important, because people just want to sometimes feel heard.
Yeah.
And if I got something in the anonymous like suggestion box, I would prepare the response and send it to everyone and say, hey, someone in the crew asked this question. I figured it may I don't know who it is, but I figure all of you may be wondering the same thing. So here's the answer on it. And I would give the most frank answer I could. And I think it's just leveling with people. And I think it shows, instead of like patronizing your personnel, you just treat them like they're your another equal person, because they are. At the end of the day, the rank is superficial. They are a person, and they deserve answers on, and they like to know why they're doing things, and they like to know why they're not going home on time or whatever, and they like to know what you're trying to do about it. So I never felt like there's always some little bit of tension sometimes, especially if you're sharing with them a policy you don't yourself agree with.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't have any problem with that. Like, you just tell them like, hey, look, this may not be something that you like, or there may be other options, but this is the one that we're going with, and here's what's good about it. Here's the challenges with it. Let's make the best of it. I think, and you have to be genuine, because if you're not genuine, then you're not, they're going to see right through it. So if you don't have a genuine appreciation for how awesome your maintainers are and what they're doing, you can't fake it, right? So, but you definitely get out there and you interact, and that's a good lead in. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, with what you just said, when you look at that communication, the way you transmit that and communicate that is from verbal and nonverbal actions, and it's kind of what you're saying. Yeah, both of those are important when you're looking to try to connect with your people and make sure they believe and trust and grow.
Yeah, and just the fact that you took the time, to be there is important. And it's funny that you think you take it for granted, right? But I've visited shops before where they said like, oh, the last CO has never been here, and you're just like, wow, that's incredible. Like, you should have eyes on everything, and have been there.
That's what that NCO said to me after I went there for that first time with them. Yeah, exactly what you're saying.
Yep. And I don't think that can change. No matter how senior you get, you have to keep doing that and still engaging. People say, I've never seen a person of this rank here. And I've had, carriers where the admiral never left the admiral spaces. And I've had carriers where the admiral went around and to the smallest work center deep in the ship, and that second one is the one that's going to earn trust, not the first. And that's a good tie-in, because my third one is the leadership aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
I brief these to everybody that checked in, including a brand new sailor that, isn't in charge of anyone, because I said, I want you to know what I tell your leaders to do. Like, I want you to know what I have asked of them, so that you know what good leadership is supposed to be, and so that
Yeah.
you can identify if you're not getting it. Um, and so, essentially, it's the leadership has to be selfless.
Yes.
In my opinion, like, it's common for the to see like a promotion to a leadership position as like a reward.
Mm-hmm.
I would always tell people in the Navy, I say, we have awards to give you awards when you're doing a good job, achievement medals and valor
Mm-hmm.
medals. Like, promotion is not an award. Promotion is a demand of you to do more with
Yep.
higher responsibility. Now, you're selected for promotion because you did a good job, but the
Yep.
promotion itself is not an attaboy. The promotion is, we need more out of you, and we think you can do it.
That's right.
So with each pay grade comes a little bit of more money and a lot more responsibility. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
I always thought of it this way, is that the people that are assigned to you by the Navy don't work for you unless you're a CEO and you own the company.
That's right.
Right. In
Yep.
the military anyway, very few of us pay the people out of our own pocket that work for us. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't really work for us. They work for the company,
Yep.
and we are tasked to lead them to success, which means to empower them and to mentor them and coach them, train them, and give them every opportunity to be their best self. They're not there to make us look good.
That's right.
They're there to accomplish a mission, and we're there to make sure that happens in the best possible way. So
Yeah.
I put a lot of pressure on my leaders. I said, I expect you to walk the work centers. I expect you to set a good example. I expect you to always prepare people for the next level, not just the level they're currently performing at. Like, have a mindset of how you're going to
Mm-hmm.
develop them to take that next step. Very, as we talked about earlier, like, very much be conscientious of how you respond to their bad news, and ensure that that
Mm-hmm.
the best way to do that not only is to stay calm in the moment, but also the way that you choose to punish. Like, if someone makes a mistake, if it's an honest mistake, they're busting their butt, they're doing their best, but they make an honest error, you have to treat that differently than someone that makes a mistake that shows they lack character or integrity.
Yeah.
And those are two very different things, and you have to
Yeah.
treat them very differently.
You mind if I share an example of that from my military experience?
Yeah, go for it.
This was, holy cow, this was, I think, 1991, so about 33 years ago or whatever kind of thing. But I was kind of helping out just for a short term to help somebody out in the command post. And there was a squadron uh, commander that called up and was requesting some information that I knew was not ethical and legal, basically, for me to communicate to him over the phone. And so I refused to do it. Well, guess what? Right after that, there was this. We had uh, deputy commander of operations, who was, as you know, the uh, 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 the sub commander for the whole wing kind of thing, and he full bird colonel, and he called me up and he said, "Give it to me." And I said, "Okay, sir." And I gave it to him. And I went in and told my boss. Well, my boss went up to his office real quick. And what was amazing, I was standing in the command, talking about what you're kind of referring to, how you're connecting with them and interacting with them, even when you need to. Um, I was standing in there, and there was probably about 8 or 10 other officers in the command post at the time. And I saw the commander walk up and, came in the door, and he walked over to me and he pointed his finger at me. He said, "Captain, you have my apologies. I want to tell you, you were right. You don't have to change that. I am apologizing to you for what I said on the phone and how I interacted with you." And I said, "That's fine, sir. That's okay with me. No problem." And
Yep.
what's amazing is I found out that his entire assignment there as the full bird colonel, I was one of two people that he ever apologized to. And and we actually connected exceedingly well whenever he saw me in a squadron or in the headquarters and all that kind of stuff. So, like you said, there are times as a leader where you got to come up and apologize in a professional and a good way, and encouraging them and that kind of thing. So it's just one little insight, one little picture of kind of what you were talking about there, just as a one illustration.
Yeah, and I would say it's almost like if you get an opportunity to realize you made a mistake, it's like a golden opportunity, because the power of as a leader showing that you make a mistake and that you're willing to acknowledge it, that you're willing to be
Mm-hmm.
accountable, it's so
Yep.
powerful to be able to tell your guys, I messed this up, and my bad, it just goes a long way. So it's almost like you should welcome it, that your whatever mistake you made, you're going to be embarrassed, but to accept that situation with open arms, because you just got handed a golden opportunity to set a great example, to
And the
tell
model.
folks, yeah, I'm not perfect. I own
Mm-hmm.
up to it. In fact, if you dance around it and just try to be like, well, I can't look bad, I'm the CEO, whatever, then I'm the leader, then like you've just thrown away a golden opportunity and really
Yes.
lost a lot of ground,
And
because when
and you've
that,
destroyed a lot of trust. Yeah.
yeah, that's huge. Yep. That accountability is really important. And you can't enforce accountability if you yourself are not willing, to be accountable. So, I think that's really important. And
Yeah.
also, like the part about owning up to things and just being honest. Like, I decided deliberately to use as like an embedding mechanism how I handled cases. So as a squadron deputy, I had opportunity to review conduct cases and decide if they were going to go to, NJP Article 15, basically where a sailor can have the CO take away money, put them on restriction, like real, it's not like a court case or anything, but it's still a punishment,
Yeah.
and it's up to the squadron deputy to decide if a sailor is going to go to the CO for that or not, or dismiss.
Yeah.
And I remember two sailors came up to me for the same offense. One of them had lied about it, and the other one had come clean right away. And I chose that moment. I'll say, you are going to go see the captain because you lied about it, and you are good to go dismissed because you had integrity.
Mm-hmm.
That sends a message, So
Yeah.
we have opportunities, I think, as leaders to what we punish, what we reward, what we call out, all those things is we can shape how our organization will grow. And so whether you do nothing and then it's a failure,
Yeah.
that's a message, right? Everything you
Yeah.
choose to do or not do, highlight or not highlight, say or not say, either serves the message and builds the trust, or goes against it.
And
So
it's interesting with what you said, because you're exactly right. Either way, you're either modeling something really good or modeling something really bad.
yeah.
And you know
In
what?
fact,
Which
yeah,
one are you doing? And that is so critical in challenging, unpredictable environments for sure.
yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah, yeah. And so so let me ask you this. Uh, Anything else you wanted to just say about those three topics, real quick?
No, I guess the other point that I would make on them is that, you know, as you define what your approach is going to be, like you can't just have it in your own head.
Right.
I wrote it out. I published it, and essentially had it ready the day I took command of the squadron, and then I used it as and I have it here. I used the paper as, my briefing guide for new
Okay.
check-ins. I
Yeah.
referenced it. If I did have an NJP case, and I would say, hey, this is where you went wrong. This is where you failed to follow the direction. And if someone did well and I was rewarding them, I'd say, hey, you supported my policy on trust because you did this. So it just, it's consistency, and it's, making sure that expectations have to be communicated, or else you're going to be disappointed. And so if
Hmm.
you do communicate expectations up front and you provide feedback when it's not being met, then you're in control of that and you're shaping it. So it's an active process. You can't really be passive with this. If you want to implement that trust culture, it
Yeah.
takes activity on your part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I know we're getting close, but we still got a 5 minutes or so. But let me ask you this: when you think of your training, and you have my compliments for everything that you brought, because every bit of that is so critical in terms of ethical decision making, professional decision making, and particularly in uh, 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 unpredictable, rapidly changing, or as in the military, you probably know what I'm about to say, VUCA,
Yeah.
for unpredictable, challenging, and changing environments. Guess what? You got to model it well, and you gotta be effective with a lot of what you brought, and that is true. So let me just ask you this: as you went up through your journey. How was that developed in you? How was that brought up in you to create that in you? Are there some things that you'd like to just share just real quick?
Well, it's a combination. Experience is certainly gonna build it, right? So it's adding tools to the toolkit
Hmm.
by experience, mentorship, um, having people specifically take an interest in teaching you things. So
Yeah.
I think that one of the best joys I have is taking anything I learned the hard way and teaching it to somebody else. So
Uh-huh.
the
Good
military is
point.
very good at that.
Good point.
When you're I became the maintenance officer of a squadron. The commander had been a maintenance officer before, so he gave me a lot of tips. And so having the humility to realize that you're learning and that people that have gone before you have something to teach you and that you should listen to them, but also
Hmm.
having some confidence to realize that particular approach is not going to work for me. So you do have to be your own person and take your own leadership style. You can't just copy someone else's.
Yeah.
But yeah, that experience builds it up, and really also being observant. As if you're a caring professional, you love your profession, you love what you do, then you have to be a student of it. And so
Hmm.
you're learning from other people. You're learning from. I do a lot of history reading, and I enjoyed that. Um, and so but you're self-aware and you're self-critical, and so it's kind of, you have this mechanism where you're reviewing and improving and striving
Yeah.
and learning, so I think all those things contribute. And the other thing is too, I guess, as I never felt confident, which is a strange thing to say, but I think I always had anxiety and fear that I wasn't going to be a good enough leader in every single
Mm.
position I had.
Understand.
And I think that little, you know, a leader has to project confidence, professional
Yes.
confidence, but
Yes.
but sort of underneath that layer, for me, it was a certain humility and anxiety that led. It's a kind of a good nervousness that led me to always think like I could screw this up, and that
Yeah.
reminder, that feeling that sort of haunted me a little bit, also pushed me to try to do better. As I think if you kind of show up thinking that you've already mastered this, and like, I've clearly am prepared for this role, the Navy picked me for command, I'm going to be awesome. You're Instead of as I've learned it, like, if your cup is full, then someone tries to put more liquid in it, it's just going to spill. So you have to
Yeah, that's true.
empty your cup and go into receive mode and learn.
That's
And
well said.
so yeah, so I think that and it goes back to what Admiral Roberti told me, how I led off this conversation, was it's not about you. None of it is about you.
That's right.
So just sort of empty the ego out of it and do your best to get better and better and better every day at how you do this for the sake of the people you're leading, so that you don't let them down and you don't embarrass yourself. And you kind of take that approach. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I think you've got to approach this with a dose of humility.
You know what? That's a good point that you're saying there. And I'll tell you, I'll just share this with you because with what you just said, I've put this in my autobiography too. But you probably remember the name General Richard B. Myers. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 2001 to about 2005. But he was a squadron commander as a lieutenant colonel of the 335th Chiefs when I was there, and I flew with him a number of times. One of the things that I tell people is he's the most fantastic leader with which I've ever served, because I learned so much literally just from observing him. Like you said, not necessarily telling you things, making you read certain things or whatever, but just from what I saw him interact with people and everything. I learned so much about leadership from that and had it expanded. So, just a very key point there. And what you said is totally on target. So, good lesson. So, let me ask you this just real quick. Any
Yeah.
last minute thing you want to kind of just say before we kind of wind down?
No, I mean, I think that the dynamic environment piece is the challenge, because
Yeah.
you have to know yourself a bit. And I know that in dynamic, chaotic situations, my instinct is to micromanage. So I have to like actively fight that. And one of the things that I
Yeah.
decided to do was I would tell my immediate subordinates, this is something that I tend to do in chaotic situations. Help me avoid micromanaging you by,
Yeah.
and I would give them like, this is what I need. Like, you get my confidence by giving me information that you are handling the situation, and I'll back off. And if I ever get to the point where I'm really in your chili, where I don't belong, I need you to tell me that,
Yeah.
And so when we went in with that understanding, it just made it very easy for them to feel confident to say, "Hey, boss, I got this." And I've had more than one subordinate take advantage of that and saying, "Hey, remember that? This is one of those times. I got this." And I'd be like, "Roger that."
Yeah.
So like, yeah, again, that goes back to humility, knowing yourself, but yeah, those, you really do earn your pay as a leader in those dynamic situations. But
Yeah.
stay calm, stay objective, and trust your folks. Give them that clear intent. In situations, if you don't provide that clear intent up front, you kind of leave people floundering. So give them
Yeah.
some of that guidance, but then let them go and let them get it done, and then bring them back so that they don't waste their time. Have periods where they come back to you to say, "Hey, this is what I'm developing. What do you think?" And you're like, "Hey, it looks good," or, "Hey, check 5 degrees right. You're a little off," and
Yeah.
then you keep them going. But at the end of the day, you have to trust them to do it. And you have to figure out where that balance is of how much you're in control and how much they're in control. But I've always found that if I let them maneuver a lot more and gave them the room to get it done, things got better.
Yep.
If I gave them good, solid initial guidance at the beginning of what their lateral limits were. So
Yeah. And
that's
it,
kind of how I do it.
And if you think about it, when you understand neuroscience and the way the brain works, there are times when people need to process what they just experienced and learned and all that kind of stuff. And it's very aligned with what you just said.
Yep. So you end up,
Cool.
asking a lot of questions, and everything's a learning opportunity too. So,
Cool.
yep.
Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you being on. I know we're kind of at the end of our time here, but Chris, you have my compliments on your service and just what you've done. You and I have been so aligned in many things in our journey in the military and all that. And but appreciate what you bring. Like I said, this once Jordana finishes this and everything, it'll be submitted on my YouTube. And it's also going to be published on the Podcast Business News Network radio show on their platform, on my little wing of it, if you will. And so it'll be published in a couple of places. So I think your messages will be getting out there.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm happy to follow up any way I can and help anybody out that I can. This is information I feel like is hopefully valuable to somebody, and nothing brings me more joy than to help someone do better with the things I learned. So,
well, I'll tell you what,
chance.
You and me both, buddy. You have my compliments, my fellow veteran, and appreciate
and EWO,
it, brother. And
right on.
There you go, EWO. And I was
an
EWO, although I wasn't in the same role as you were, because I was on the normal F4s. So, but I did have EWO training. So yeah, I was. You and I are very aligned. But listen, I appreciate the service, my friend. It's been an honor to have you on here today, and I'll let you go. Get some dinner or something, and maybe we'll see you again and chat again.
Absolutely. It's full crisis mode planning here, and so I'm right back to what we talked about. Very dynamic, but yeah, I'm off to it. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
You have a good one. Okay.
Okay. You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.